صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum everyone. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله على نعمة الإسلام. الحمد لله على نعمة الإيمان. الحمد لله على نعمة الهداية. والحمد لله على نعمة الولاية. Thank you. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب والأئمة عليهم السلام. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وقوله الحق وهو أصدق الصادقين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. So tonight we are talking about wudu, something that might seem that it's something quite basic, but when I told a few people that we'll talk about wudu, they said, one of the organizers said, that's excellent, because a lot of people wanted to ask about this subject. And I think it's also very important because, as you will see, we have one of the most important pillars in our deen, which is salah, prayer. And so wudu is something that occurs before it. It's a condition before it. It's a prerequisite. So I think it's good to talk about wudu because we all want to perfect our prayers. We all want to improve our prayers. But also it's very important to get the prerequisite right, meaning the condition of prayer is wudu, to have wudu. So what is wudu? Anyone here want to tell me what wudu is? Okay. Wudu is something that makes you clean and it cleans all your sins. Yes? Wudu is something you do before your prayers. Excellent, both right. Anyone else? Something to purify yourself. Excellent, beautiful. All three is right. Yourself? It's similar, but that's right. Wudu is something you do to clean yourself before prayers. Don't be so picky. You can be picky on my talk, not on each other. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So wudu is something that we do, as I said, it's a prerequisite, a condition before namaz, salah. It is a ritual practice which has a lot of philosophy and theory and meaning behind it as well. So basically it's a type of washing. That's right. A lot of people said that, and that's correct. So why do we do wudu? First and foremost, we do it because God said for us, each and every one of us who are able, we should engage in what is called salah, which is prayer. And when we do prayer, God said when you want to stand up and establish prayers, what you should do is what's called wudu, the preparation for prayer. So the first reason we do it is because God told us to do it. Sorry? Who was the one that made up the name wudu? I'm not sure. That's a very good question. Find out the answer and please let me know. Okay, great. So one of the reasons, the first reason being that God told us to do it in preparation of prayers. Second reason, that it is the step before prayers. The third reason is, as some of the brothers mentioned, it's an act of cleanliness. Now we notice in today's day and age, it can get hot. When it gets hot, it's nice to splash some water on your face, but also it's good to be clean. And wudu is one of those actions that cleans us through water. Water is something that is the best purifier. Water is something which is the best cleaning agent. We find that we wash our clothes with water. We find that we wash our carpet with water. We find that we wash our car with water. We don't wash it with orange juice. We don't wash it with pineapple juice or blood. We wash it with water. So cleanliness is a very important part of Islam, and we notice that back then, people weren't as clean as they should be. And so Prophet laid an emphasis on cleanliness, and one of the types of cleanliness is wudu. There's also ghusl, and there's also other types of cleanliness as well. So we find that, who knows who the current queen is in England? Yes? Queen Elizabeth. What was that? The second. Queen Elizabeth II is the current queen of England. Before Queen Elizabeth II, who was the queen? Yes? Queen Victoria? You know what, I shouldn't have even asked because I'm not sure of the answer. It could be. But who I'm trying to point out towards is Queen Elizabeth I. I'm guessing, I'm assuming, because Queen Elizabeth II is second, but yes? It's not? Okay, my little cousin, he knows, and he said it's not before. So when was Queen Elizabeth I? We find that Queen Elizabeth I wasn't too long ago, within the last 100 or 200 years or so. Queen Elizabeth, who is the royalty, she is the leader of the nation, she's the head of the people, she's the richest of the rich people. Do you know how often it is said that she used to clean herself and bathe and have a shower? Anyone want to guess? Sorry? Milk? Yes, she probably did clean herself with milk, but how often did she have a bath? Twice a day? Every second? Well, that would be a bit difficult. Then she doesn't have time to run the country, but possibly. Any other guesses? Twice a year? Any other guesses? 5 times a day. Okay, so some great guesses. We think that someone who's very rich, who owns a lot of money, has castles, would want to wash herself quite regularly. But we find, and history tells us, Queen Elizabeth I, who's only, as I said, the last 200 years, washed herself, had a bath once a month. Once a month. Is that a lot or not enough? Not enough. There were stinky poos back then. Okay, about 100, 200 years ago. They were a bit smelly. And imagine, this was the richest of people. This was royalty. This was the ashraf. So only about 200 years ago, they used to wash themselves not that often. Imagine the people who weren't queens and kings. Imagine the people like you and I, who are everyday people. So if she washed herself once a month, imagine others probably a bit less. And a lot of people couldn't afford water or didn't have access to water. And we find that a few hundred years before that, during the Middle Ages, medieval period, again, the richest of people, they only washed themselves once every couple of months, once every couple of years. And we have instances that says that there was a particular royalty that washed herself only 5 times in her lifetime. So it could be because of the culture, it could be because of several reasons. They had no access or something. But of course, the richest would have had access. If they didn't have electricity, they still had water. So we find that the Prophet laid so much emphasis on cleanliness that there's hadith that cleanliness is a part of your faith or half of your faith. An-nadhafa juz'atul iman, juz' al-iman. Cleanliness is part of your faith, just like shahada is part of your faith, salah is part of your faith, sawm is part of your faith. So too is cleanliness. Yes. So cleanliness is a part of our faith. And so one of the reasons why we do wudu is to clean ourselves. You know, sometimes we might have some sweat, some grub, something. It's not the best form of cleaning. Ghusl is much better. And that's why we see that the Prophet encouraged people to do ghusl at least once a week during Jumu'ah. But being ethnics and being people who do certain things that require ghusl a lot, they probably bathed a lot more back then. And so the Prophet encouraged, for example, after relations with your spouse, you have to do ghusl. So there was that much emphasis on cleanliness, and it makes us appreciate that if the Queen only 100 or 200 years ago washed themselves once a month, imagine how new this and foreign this concept of cleaning was. And it was in the middle of the desert. Usually in the desert you don't have access to water, but by one of the miracles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we've heard of the water called Zamzam that was established there at the time of, during Safa and Marwa, at the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, and we also find that we have what's called energy meridians. And we have 3 energy meridians from here to there. They run along the forearm, and when you wash it, it cleanses those energies. And we find that it actually runs downwards. Some of you may have heard things called chakras. These are energies that we have in our bodies. The powerful one over here. And that's why we put it on the earth, on our hands. These are energies that make our bodies move and give it energy, give it light. So one of the reasons for wudu is cleanliness. One of the reasons for wudu is also when you pour water on yourself, it's a relaxing agent. It relaxes you, it cools you off. That's why we have hadith that says, if you are angry, one of the methods to diffuse your anger, because we all get angry. Sometimes someone looks at us the wrong way. Sometimes someone says the wrong thing, or we think they said something. Sometimes someone did something, and we get angry sometimes. And at that point, when you think you got angry, one of the recommendations is to go and do wudu. Because anger in itself is a heated, it comes from a heated, hot place. That's why you see that you feel hot. Whereas when you pour water on yourself, it cools it down. And another thing from the traditions we have is when you're angry, a great thing you can also do is if you're standing up, you sit down. If you feel that you're angry, it's very simple, and we have it in our traditions. You're standing up, you sit down. Because when you're standing up, you're in a motion of reaction. You want to reciprocate, you want to attack and retaliate. Whereas when you're sitting, you can't really fight while you're sitting. So in and of itself, when you're sitting, it's a position for something other than attacking and retaliating. We also know that it refreshes us, wudu. Makes us wake up. So there are all these little benefits that sometimes we don't think about of wudu. But one of the most important things why we do wudu is we're approaching something very, very important, i.e. salah, i.e. prayers. So when we're approaching something so important such as prayer, hopefully in future we can discuss a bit more about prayers, or amongst yourselves talk about prayer and why it's emphasized so much. Or go and listen to lectures online about prayer. It is said that it's the mi'raj al-mu'min, according to hadith. It's something that elevates you and intoxicates you, and it's as though you're flying. You're in a spiritual high. People take drugs and alcohol to feel a high. If we're able to pray properly, our prophets and our imams, they had that natural high from prayer. That's why it says, as-salah mi'raj al-mu'min. So we find salah is such an important thing. In the Quran it says, it repels you from evil. Inna salata ala anil. Anyone know the verse? Help me out. Inna salata tanha anil fahshai wal munkar. So indeed, prayer repels you from all evil and all bad filth actions. So it's something very important and very crucial, and something that if we actually pray according to what our teaching says, then there's no way that we actually allow evil to come towards us. And there's no way that once we're in a mode of prayer, proper prayer, that once we leave prayer, we remain in a state of prayer, and we won't even think about things that are bad for us, bad to others. So we're approaching something which is very important. And on top of that, prayer is a meeting. It's a meeting with God, the creator of the world. So imagine we have a job interview. Everyone gets pretty nervous. You make sure you dress the best. You make sure that you come on time, you don't come late. So if we think of prayer like that, we are meeting not just the boss of a company, the boss of the world, the boss that created me, the boss that created the world, the boss that created the greatest thing that comes to imagination. So we're going for a meeting, and wudu is one of the preparations for it. Puts us in a mode. On top of that, when we're doing wudu, what it does is, for example, we can always just say, okay, I need to pray, start Allahu Akbar and start praying. But with anything that requires a bit of thought and is important, there's always preparation for it. For example, if you're going to go on a race, what do you do before your race? Yes? You warm up, you stretch, you make sure your shoes are tied properly. All these things, there's preparation. With anything, when you want to go for a drive, you make sure that there's petrol in the car, there's oil in the car, whatever the case may be. So when you're going for prayer, instead of just turning on the engine and not knowing whether it's got the seat belt is working or the oil is there or not, wudu puts you in this mode that you're approaching prayer. And so that psychologically prepares you and puts your mind towards that thing, if we do it consciously, of course. So it said wudu is like the shore of the sea. The sea being the prayer, so the ocean is like the prayer, and wudu is the shore where the waves are crashing. So it's a part of that sea. And even on the shore, his face would be... This is about Imam Ali. I'll mention that a bit later, inshallah. So very quickly, we learnt a bit about what wudu is, but let's talk about how to do wudu. We learnt a bit about the philosophy, some benefits, some of the great things and meaning behind wudu. So how do we do wudu? So I read earlier in the Quran, it says, "O you who believe, when you prepare for prayer, wash your faces and hands to the elbows, and rub your head and your feet to the ankles." Very simple. So we find that there are 4 things that are wajib, that is a compulsory in wudu. Anyone want to list one of them? Yes? Niyat. Okay, that's another. Niyat is very important and part of every action that we do in Islam. But the actual wudu, there's 4 parts. Tahara or wudu is a type of tahara, yes? Wash your face, that's one thing. Your hands to the elbow, beautiful. Your feet, yes. Must the feet, rub. I heard wash your hand. That's not a wajib part of it. It is a mustahab act, and we'll talk about it. Wipe your head. So it's just those 4, and it's in the Quran. Whether you're Sunni or Shia, those 4 are the 4 compulsory acts. Now how to do that, it differs a little bit slightly between the 2 schools. I can't talk when there's such a distraction in front of me, a good-looking man. No, that's no indication of what I was talking about the other day. This one was pretty good. Okay, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Until it's fixed. Is it okay? Oops. Okay, so after you do your niyyah, you approach the tap, or you have a cup of water, whatever the case may be. Very, very simple way. There's many mustahabat to wudu, but if we know the simple basic of it, then we can add on to it. You can use a bucket too. So basically, you grab water. So it's mustahab. It's not necessary to wash your hands, but it's good to do it. It's mustahab. So after you wash your hand, I'll talk about just the 4 wajib parts we said in the Quran. Grab water with your right hand, yeah, and you pour it over your face. You can do that once or twice or 3 times, whatever. And then you start washing in a downwards way. Very simple. Try and get every part of it wet. That's it. So as long as the width is of your hand like that, that's all you got to cover. That's it. And if you do a bit more, that's fine. So you grab water, pour it, and you do that. That's considered washing it once. You only have to do it once. If you want, you can do it again. That becomes mustahab. But 3rd time, in our school, we shouldn't do it. It's not permissible. So basically, once again, grab water, pour it over our face, and then start doing this in a downwards way. That's it. We've washed the face. Great. So he's doing another mustahab act where you pour it from your left hand, then you switch it I won't talk about that, that's a bit complicated for some people. So then what you do is you pour water in your left hand. You ensure that your hand is downwards, and you pour it on your elbow, either like this or like that, and then you go downwards. Very simple. Make sure everything gets covered between your hands as well. So quite often we see that when we do it, our hand goes up. In our school and in the scholars say avoid that. So it should be downwards. So you've done that, that's it. That's your right hand. Grab water on your right hand, pour it on your left. The same thing. So you've done your face, you've done your right hand, you've poured on your left hand. Make sure everything gets wet. And then you don't need to touch the water again. With the same hand on your right hand, grab it. You can even do